So unknowingly, we can all very much let other people's judgment determine our life choices, our path, our decisions, and that then becomes a trap. And we all know where that leads. And it's not a happy outcome. It's not a happy ending to that story.
No.
But I think very much that is the unconscious path that most of us will naturally follow without knowing it. But there's a very powerful story, which I think is an empowering one, which is about the power of choice and the freedom of choice that every individual in your stories, and for you yourself and for your mum, that overcame that and had to realise, unfortunately the hard way, as we all do, that there is a choice in there. There is a choice to accept or surrender or just be like, I can't help other people's judgment about me, but I can control what I choose to do and what I can choose in response to that judgment, which I think is the beautiful story.
Welcome to the Motherhood Clinic, a podcast about caring for mothers after childbirth, led by clinical experience and real life stories. If you're a new mom and ever asked yourself, is what I'm going through normal? Should I be worried? Or who should I ask for help? This podcast is for you. It's for anyone navigating those early weeks, months, or even years after having a baby. Each episode brings together voices from across the motherhood journey, from clinicians, experts, and mothers from all walks of life. We're here to help you feel more empowered in your unique motherhood journey. We believe in a better start to motherhood.
Kayla, it is great to have you on the Motherhood Clinic podcast. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
You're calling, I'm very mindful that it's early in your neck of the woods. I think it's 6 a.m. So I appreciate even more so the extra effort that you're making for our guests and our listeners. So Kayla, I want to give you a bit of an introduction and then I'll allow you to talk about yourself too. But Kayla, we met, I think one of your agents reached out regarding the work that you've been doing. And as soon as I heard about it, I instantly knew that this would be a great conversation. So you are a TED speaker. You are an author and also a professor at university. Why I was interested in the work that you've done, you've written a book in particular called Don't Be an Athena. And the key thing that I took from that book and our conversations is just understanding certain things that we do unknowingly to each other around judgment that has a significant impact not just to ourselves, but to other people, but also following generations. That's really the conversation of this discussion. It's more around how do we judge and be wary of judging other people. We've got 3 episodes coming up. This has been number 1, which is all about really the core thesis behind Don't Be an Athena and what it means to judge others and what the impact it has. The second will be more at a societal level. What does it mean when the society and the system fails you? And what is the impact that has on you? And then the third one is really, we're always looking to provide hope and optimism, which is around how do we break that cycle? When we know this has happened to us, we do it to other people. How do we start to break that ongoing generational trauma? So those are the 3 conversations we're going to have. I'm going to stop here, Kayla, because I've been prattling on for a while. I would love for you to give our listeners a brief introduction to yourself, Kayla, and why should they listen in to this conversation for the next 30 or so minutes? Yeah.
Yes, I'm an English professor. I have taught at the university level approximately since 2018. Prior to getting into higher education, I have taught high school English. So I taught teenagers for 10 years. And in my experience as an educator, that opened up a lot of harsh realities to where my students are coming from and the obstacles that they are facing on a daily basis. As a high school English teacher, if I suspected any forms of abuse, it was legally required of me to report it. So teaching teenagers, I would occasionally run into teenage girls being sexually assaulted by family members or people that they had known. And every single case that I reported, it came back as inconclusive. And I have never had a sexual assault victim ever see her day in court. So that kind of helped set up, part of the reason why this book was so important was just seeing a lot of the young women in our area being exploited and trying to raise awareness on how do we better protect women. But
Mm.
at the same time, I'm a daughter of a teen mom.
Hmm.
My mother had me at 16 years old, which was the 1980s in a very conservative, traditional area of the United States. So that was taboo. And so she carried the weight of teen pregnancy. And then, like 27 years later, when I was wanting to get pregnant myself, I carried the burden of infertility. And as I was going through infertility, I did this like compare contrast analysis between my mother's experience and my experience. And it seemed like we both were not spared judgment.
Mm.
And it kind of, I had this epiphany that unless you follow society's strict narrative as a woman, you're not exempt from any form of judgment. People
Mm.
feel entitled to express their opinions about your life. And so if I just came to the conclusion that if people are going to judge you no matter what, then you might as well live the way that you want to live. And and in the process of this isn't just about living the way that I want to live. It's about bringing awareness and advocacy and being part of a movement to create a better generation so women in families do not suffer at the level that other families have suffered in previous generations.
Great, great. And thank you, Kayla, for that, that scene set. And, what was powerful when we first spoke, so listeners may not be familiar with the book you've written
Hmm.
and the way I'd love for you to tell the story that you told me around the core thesis of Don't Be an Athena, because, um, instantly I got it. I just think I'd love for people to hear that in your own words. I think that will then set the scene for this conversation today
Hmm.
as to, why is that story so important? So could you do us the honors of talking about the book
Yeah.
and what are the learnings from that, please? Yeah.
So this book is it's like 6 years in the making from the idea surfacing until actual like physical book. We're talking almost 6 years. And the idea surfaced under COVID. COVID just gave me this opportunity to reflect. So I was very open about my experiences with infertility and miscarriage and all the feelings and emotions associated with those issues. And women would come forward to me in private because they didn't want to go public because there's still like this taboo admitting that you're suffering from infertility or that you had a miscarriage. And so women would privately message me. This idea of a book surfaced, and this idea of interviewing a variety of women from various backgrounds uh, surfaced. So the idea of Don't Be an Athena really didn't surface until like I didn't change the title of my book probably until after my first TED Talk.
Mm.
And if you're not familiar with the goddess Athena, she actually is a goddess who is held in high regard. She's known for her wisdom. But one of the characteristics that I appreciate about the Greek gods and goddesses is how human they are. They are not perfect. They're jealous. They commit horrendous crimes.
Yes.
and and in fact, one of the realities that they're so jealous of with us humans is the fact that we have mortality. That when you have an infinite amount of years to live, what do you have to live for? And so
Mm.
they are jealous of humans' mortality. Medusa originally she was born mortal. She was the only mortal sister of the three Gorgons. And she's described as being beautiful, stunning. And instead of getting married and I guess fulfilling her duty as a woman in the ancient Greek times, she decides to become a priestess to the goddess Athena. And in the story I go off of is more toward the Roman poet Ovid's interpretation of Medusa. So she develops this relationship with Athena. So by all accounts, we can assume that Athena and Medusa had this close friendship. And then Medusa, she gains Poseidon's attraction. And Poseidon, who is also an Olympian, he's a god. He's a god of a tremendous amount of power and influence. He violates Medusa in Athena's holy temple. And as a result, Athena decides to turn Medusa into the famous Gorgon that she's famous for thousands of years and even in the 21st century. And there's speculation as to why she did that. It could be there's a lot of patriarchal discourse going on with the gods. By all accounts, Athena matches Poseidon as far as like uh, what she's allowed to do. But yet she decides to attack the victim instead of going after the perpetrator.
Mm-hmm.
And the other interpretation of why Athena does what she does could be she overreacts to overprotect, in that maybe she, as a goddess, felt shame in not being able to protect Medusa the way that she should have. And as a result, she turns her into this Gorgon. And because when she's a Gorgon, she turns men into stone. So it's almost like she was trying to make sure that no man could ever do that to her again. But what's interesting is she's also responsible for Medusa's death. She provides Perseus with the proper tools to defeat Medusa. He beheads her. And from Medusa's beheading, she gives birth to 2 children. And then Perseus uses her head as a shield to protect his mother from a horrible king. And then later on, you see Athena using her head as a shield, and a lot of the Olympians are using her head as a shield. So she kind of shifts that narrative to she becomes this form of protection. And I streamline that into the 21st century because today Medusa is just the symbol of female rage, and many people associate her with being survivors of sexual assault. But I and not that I do talk about those heavy topics in my book, but it's also about just victimizing individuals who have gone through something tragic and turning them into monsters that are continuing this generational curse instead of actually addressing the trauma, whatever that trauma may be.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's incredible, Kayla. I would encourage everyone to listen to your TED talk. We'll make sure we link that in the description. There's so many things I want to pick up on, Kayla, about what you've just talked about. But I guess stepping back, when I heard it for the first time, instantly it clicks, and I'm hoping that it will resonate with people listening in too, because I think the value of using kind of the Greek mythology and the story is you're able to handle such raw and emotive topics, which are going to be very difficult to understand and live with. But the timeless principles and the timeless stories help us to engage with the conversation and understand it, right? We know it's not real, right? But there are real lessons and real stories that are what's the word? Timeless. I mean, that's why these stories are still told today. That's why they are so big. And the idea of what does that translate as actions and behaviors and conversations that happen to us still to this day and will continue, right? But I think in the first instance, the reason we set this podcast up in the first place is you have to raise awareness and education to those behaviors and those conversations in order to do something about it. So we can't stop them. They will continue to happen. But for the individual listening in that can take the time to appreciate what it is that's being said, hopefully for yourself and for your lineage, you can do something about it. So I think that's what really resonated when you mentioned that story. And I'd love to dig into what, almost moving away now from the mythology and the stories to what that looks like in today. Like, what was that like for you? What's that been like, as part of the book that you've written goes into several real stories
Hmm.
from many women across cultures and across generations. And that's what makes it so real, because this isn't just like you know, um, a tale that you should learn the moral from. This is real, and these are real stories about real women. So there are things that we all need to be aware of. Um, so I wonder if we can delve now from the story into those real life experiences, and the translation of what you've just talked about, and what that was like for you. What did you have to go through? What was your version of being made to feel like that, and maybe you also being the perpetrator, right? So
Yes.
we have to have both sides of those, and then equally to then highlight maybe a few of those stories of people, of the women that you interviewed. So I'd love to kind of go there next, so that we start to really make this more than just a parable, right? So
Yeah, I think when I was interviewing some of these women, some of my own biases started to surface, and
mm,
it made me more aware of how I interact in conversations with
mm,
women, with young couples, and and that was powerful, specifically with women who don't want to be moms. I interviewed a few women who just they don't want to be moms, and like just the societal judgment of that decision. And then I interviewed women who desperately wanted to be mothers, and life just handed them with a difficult deck of cards. I think one woman may eventually become a mother through a different way, whether it's through adoption or surrogacy. And the other woman, she decided that she was redefining what it means to be in love. And she did that she was going to fall in love with her life. And she quit holding back because she wanted to hold back on traveling, holding back on experiences. She really wanted a partner in life to share that with. She struggled to find somebody who was going to share that. So she's no longer holding back on life. She gave herself permission to life didn't go the way that I had planned,
mm,
but it doesn't mean that I must hold back on my life. So she'll work like
yeah,
3 jobs, she'll just save, and she will go and she'll live her life. And I think that's
yeah,
important. And in her story, it's Aubrey or Audrey, and she faced judgment because one of the first trips she had gone to or gone on, it was a smaller trip. I'm in Missouri. I think I mention it in my book. She decides to go to Hot Springs, Arkansas, or that area. She's going camping, and like she walks into a restaurant and people are judging her because she's this single woman who is um, camping by herself. And people thought that was so odd. So, but I love her story because she takes her health under her control, and she takes control over her life regardless of what people are going to say about it. But I remember growing up and I felt like, what were my options growing up? I always assumed that getting married and having kids was a part of every woman's narrative. So when I
mm,
interviewed women who don't have children or have no desire to have children, that was eye opening to me because I was under this impression that all women wanted children. And I realized I was being Athena because I felt like, okay, was I judging women on their like societal ranking by, oh, they don't have children. So, we rank women by if they follow the narrative. And I found myself being an Athena and doing that same. And then when I
mm,
interviewed women who didn't want to have children, it made me realize, okay, some women just don't want to have kids, and that's okay. They're still women. And
mm,
it also made me realize that just because a woman doesn't want to have kids, it doesn't mean they want to be excluded from my
mm,
life.
mm,
And
yeah,
what I have gone through is it just made me realize people make statements because society told them it's acceptable to make statements, because I
mm,
feel society has set up these expectations. And I try to follow that narrative because my mom didn't. I mean, my mom had me at 16 and
mm,
I wanted to do everything correct. I graduated high school with honors. I attended university. I met my husband in university, and then I graduated, started my career, started my master's degree, had my health insurance. It was time to have a baby, and infertility hit.
Mm,
And when you go through infertility, similar to teen pregnancy, people feel entitled to make statements. And I felt like I guess my membership into society was completely tied to my womb and my ability to have children.
Interesting.
And so that was eye-opening, and, because it seemed like anytime I go out in public or if I attended church, people were like, "Are you pregnant? Are you pregnant? When are you gonna have a baby? When are you gonna
mm,
give your in-laws a grandchild?" And it was just, like, constant.
yeah.
And I just I don't want any woman or any couple to go through that. And then after I had my 2 daughters, the next question was, "Are you gonna have another child? You need to have a boy."
Because it works like that. Because it just
You're
works
going
like
through
that.
that now? Like, when's the boy coming?
Yeah, yeah. I think there's again, thank you for sharing that, Kayla. I think again it helps to bring to life the reality of the story. I think there's two big themes that come out as you speak. I guess the main one being, as we're talking about, the central theme for this whole conversation today is the power of judgment, right? And it works so in all different ways. There's the power that other people have and that people now naturally drawn to. The ability to judge others does give you a power, and knowingly or unknowingly, like that, right? And we all do it. It's a natural thing. We all judge others whether we like it or not. I don't like, right? Yeah,
We're
no
all
one like, no one can,
insecure.
oh,
Like, we're all insecure in some
absolutely.
ways.
But then I think the interesting thing there is to be aware of the power that that exerts on the person being judged. And if you are
Mhm.
the one being judged, realizing that that can also be, there is a power that you have to find within you to overcome that judgment. And that's the second theme, which is around choice. So unknowingly, we can all very much let other people's judgment determine our life choices, our path, our decisions, and that then becomes a trap. And we all know what that leads. And it's not a happy outcome. It's not a happy ending to that story. But I
No.
think very much that is the unconscious path that most of us will naturally follow without knowing it. But there's a very powerful story, which I think is an empowering one, which is the power of choice and,
Yes.
and the freedom of choice that
Yes.
every individual in your stories that overcame that and had to realize that there is a choice in there. There is a choice to accept or surrender or just be like, I can't help other people's judgment about me, but I can control what I choose to do
Yes.
and what I can choose in response to that judgment, which I think is the beautiful story, and that I think is the message of hope, which I think everybody can identify with, whether you're a man, a woman, pregnant, or not pregnant, it doesn't matter. And that's what I identify so much with the book and the way that you've chosen to frame this. I mean, and we also judge ourselves, right?
Mhm.
We judge ourselves too. I should be this. Shouldn't I be there by now? So I think it's a beautiful tale that I think I really grabbed onto when I was like, this makes so much sense. And it gives you that framework to then look at yourself and realize we all do it. I do it to
Yes.
myself, but I can do something about it.
It's
What
a
you've
book
done.
it's a book about visibility, is
Mm,
feeling visible. Um, I grew up my stepdad was domestically violent, and
mm,
I was very quiet. I was silent. I didn't speak. And that's because remaining silent meant survival. If I didn't speak, I was invisible, which meant I can survive. And I don't want victims to feel like they're invisible to survive. I want visibility. I want the hope. I want the empowerment, because when you start becoming open about your stories, you can find human connection and
mm,
realize what you had gone through, one, should not have happened. It was not your fault.
yeah.
Two, other people have survived. And I think that there's a lot of power in storytelling and connection, regardless of where people are in the world.
Yeah, that's incredible, Kate. And I'm sorry to hear that happened, and thank you for sharing that because again, there's so many parallels with the work that we're doing and the people that we speak to. not obviously, you had a very severe case that came, but same principle applies when we talk to mothers who find it difficult to advocate for themselves, and they disappear and they then talk about their problems. But what we're saying is you need to give voice to their problems, and that then gives you power, and it allows
Uh-huh.
you to find other connections of people that have been through this stuff, and to therefore seek help, or to find the choice to overcome these things. So it is the same principle, it is the same story
Yes.
applied to every realm of life. So I think that's where I think the real power in these stories, principles, conversations is. So I think, as I was saying there, I think I can't say enough good things about like the way that you've chosen to really architect this story. Um, so in closing, I'm wondering, Kayla, what would be your take home or your key message to someone listening in to help them better recognize one, when they are being judged and what they should do to not be led by other people's judgment? And then secondly, how do they recognize in themselves when they are unconsciously or unintentionally judging other people?
If you're being judged, I'm a incredibly stubborn person. So
Okay.
I'm the type of person that if you're going to underestimate me, I'm going to prove you wrong every single time.
I like
Um,
that.
that's me. And I realize that's also my daughters. They inherited that trait, which is both positive and negative at times. Yeah, I don't mind that you have that trait, just not with me.
Yeah, of
So
course, of course.
but like that's my mindset is I am this incredibly stubborn person, and I have been
Mm,
underestimated I don't know how many times, and
mm,
I think I'm finally at this level that people are going to stop underestimating me because
mm,
I have decades of like going through this judgment and proving people wrong every single time. But it's made me more empathetic. I have shifted as an educator. I every time that I've been and I'm guilty of this even as an educator, and I think doctors and physicians would do this. I think sometimes I assumed my students' stories, and you can't assume anybody's story. You
sure.
can't. And when you start getting to the truth, it's quite humbling. And so now that I'm almost 2 decades into my career, I no longer assume a student's story. I've learned to develop a safe place for my students to talk, to so I can listen.
And is there something you would say to the person that is listening in saying, you know what, I do feel judged, but I'd also feel powerless to do
Yes.
something about it? What would you say to that doesn't feel that they can overcome this, that doesn't feel strength and resilience, they just feel like I'm trapped? What would you say to that person?
Yeah, and I think a lot of us have felt that way. We've all had those moments of crying in the shower and realizing, like, I don't
Mm,
think I can do this.
mm,
You're so much stronger than what you think you are.
mm,
And you can have those moments of vulnerability. You can.
mm.
And you can get through it. Try to find your own support system. In fact, the woman that is going through my mind when you made that statement was Tony, when I interviewed Tony, because Tony, her story is littered with trauma.
Mhm.
Um, she was molested by her uncle. She left her family. She became a mother at 15 years old. Then she was 8 months pregnant when her partner left her, and she's here with 2 kids and a baby on the way. She breaks her ankle. She doesn't have parental leave. She gives birth. She enters postpartum depression, and she admits that she didn't want anything happening to her kids, but she was okay with disappearing, and she had to fight through it. And she came out on the other side where her kids are thriving, and she's now a grandmother.
Oh,
I
wow.
Yeah, and that her story is just a story of resilience, and
Mm,
everything that could go wrong. And she wanted to give up. She wanted to give up multiple times. And I always tell people that I see life kind of as a ruler, and what you're going through is almost like 1 inch of your life.
mm,
And if
mm,
you
mm.
6 months from now, a year from now, if you keep going, you're going to reflect back and say, I'm glad I didn't give up. I'm glad I didn't give up. keep going, because where your life is going to be 6 months, a year, 2 years from now could be completely different because you chose not to give up.
Great. No, I think that's a strong message, I think, to anyone that is going through a level of adversity and feels like it is. And I guess the difficulty is you don't know how long that's going to be, right? Is that inch? Is it a foot? Is it a mile, right? But hopefully, eventually, there is, if you keep persisting and working through that, getting the appropriate help, of course, and not knowing that
Yes.
you don't do this alone, right? There are people and institutions out there um, that will help you. So that would be, I guess, my message from the work that we're doing. These are some great stories, I think, and for people to
Yeah.
look at Tony. Yeah.
And being
Go ahead.
honest that you need help. I think that
Yep.
is being honest that you need help.
Great. Kayla, this has been, a really great conversation. We've got 2 more coming up, but I wanted to thank you in the first instance. As I said, when I first understood the story that you were writing, what you've done, I thought it was great. So I do encourage people to, again, listen to the TED Talk, grab a copy of the book, and in the next conversations, we'll talk more about when society fails you and a societal pressure that then creates to create the Athenas of the world. So looking at it more from what needs to happen at a more group level and a community level to improve this picture. But Kayla, for now, thank you very much, and chat again in the next discussion.
Thank you.